What's going on, everybody? FYB presents Wise Word Wednesdays, a quick live stream to help you get closer to accomplishing your dreams. I'm your host, Joe Spider, and of course, you know I represent that fresh. Listen, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and hit that like button. Hit that subscription button if you're not already doing so, and drop a comment if you feel so wonderful enough to do so, if you feel so inclined. Look, man, today we got another good one for you. Um, I'm excited for this Wise Word Wednesday guest because we are like real life brothers and we can talk quite a bit about a life, about a lot of different things, about like just our journeys. And I'm super excited so that he can talk a little bit about his journey. As you all know, we do this every single week, and the purpose of this is really meant to provide you with insight, right? Everybody posts the highlights on their social media. Everybody posts the great things. Everybody posts the positive things, but this particular show is meant to provide you with some background knowledge, just so you can see that everything isn't sugar and spice. Everything isn't just sweet. Some things are extremely challenging, or there are some things that we can provide you with so that way your challenge isn't the same as our challenge. And so I'm super excited. This person that I'm going to bring up to the stage is going to talk about their life and some of the things that they face and the work that they are doing specifically in regards to education for males, because as a person that works in education, there is a lot of things that go swept under the rug. Let's just use that, that need to be addressed. And this man is doing the addressing on a day-to-day basis. I'm talking about feet on the ground, putting in work to help men achieve education. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I am bringing to the stage none other than my brother Hakeem Croom. What's going on, King?
My brother, man, I'm great. King, how are you, loved one?
I'm solid, man. I'm so glad. Thank you for being on the show, man.
It's an honor, bro. Thank you for, having me on, man. And I've been following you. You're my brother, man, and following everything you're doing with Wise Word Wednesday, and giving that inspiration to our people, man. So happy to be invited to just impart something to our community, right? Some wisdom and some gems, man. So let's go on and get on to it.
No doubt, no doubt. And for those of you that are watching, if you're watching on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, on Twitter Live, if you're listening right now on any of our podcast platforms, I must let you know that this is a pre-recorded session. Even though it's going to be streamed live, it's a pre-recorded session. We are recording actually on Tuesday night. So you will see this Wednesday evening. So for some of y'all that be in the comments, I don't want y'all to be like, why he not responding to my comments? Why he not posting my comment? Because I can't see it right now because we're already recording. But still leave those comments, because what it does is it allows the algorithm to see that we're actually providing some good information that could be, key and insightful. So without further ado, Brother Hakeem, could you just, if you could do me a favor and tell the people a little bit about the work that you do as a professional within the education field?
Yeah, so thanks again, bro. So in regard to just the work that I do, first and foremost, I'm a husband, father, scholar, Black liberationist, as I like to say. And in the sphere of education in this field, I've been in education now since 2012 in higher ed specifically. But I cut my teeth back in like 2000 and 10, right? When I had an internship with Columbia Teachers College, where I taught fifth graders in New York City. I'm from Harlem, New York. And education was always something that growing up was a value of mine and my family. It was instilled into me by my family. I had the privilege of growing up with both my parents, both my mom and my dad in my life. And, we, through them, they instilled just the love to want to learn and to read. And, back then in the hood that we didn't have a lot of resources. So like, they'll take you to the library. You know what I mean? That was like our outing. Go to the library with your
Right.
library card and go pick out a book. You know what I mean? So, I had an early, yearning for reading and just being, immersed in education. And so, and my mom and my dad both they didn't really have a a background as far as like going to higher education, but they went to high school, and my dad didn't finish, my mom finished, but they wanted to make sure that their kids, that they went on and had the ranks of higher education and went on to succeed as far as that way and go as far as they can. So, I say all that to say, like, when it comes to education, like, that's something that I've always, had just a passion for, right? And so at certain points in my life, it was one of those things where I didn't know, that I would be in the field of higher education. But, just far as like being like chosen to do the work and being gifted this work, right, to do this and having a love for it. So that's kind of led me down a path of, when it comes to the work that I do now. I currently serve as the director of the Male Success Alliance at California State University, Dominguez Hills. The Male Success Alliance was the first program that was geared toward, serving males of color, Black and brown specifically. Sometimes I use the word males of color, but Black and brown males specifically, in regards to providing holistic support, like academic support, social support, career development, professional development. And so, to be able to do this work every day is an honor. But I'll be remiss to say, as far as part of my journey with the work that I'm doing in Dominguez now, it's like one of those things where when I'm working with students or having conversations and seeing the impact and being a Black male specifically in this space and what it's been able to do to transform lives and humanize young men. I just thank the Most High. I think the Creator, because it's like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like, it's a part of my life's work and a part of like how I was shaped and molded, right, through the gifts, through the ancestors, parents, so on and so forth, right. I left Harlem at 16 years old I had a basketball scholarship, an athletic scholarship to go to to Fishburne Military School, in Waynesboro, Virginia. So at 16, I left my family. I left Harlem, everything I knew, to go to Waynesboro, Virginia, to the boonies. I went from a predominantly Black space to a predominantly white space where I was a fish out of water, right? I was like a whole different world for me, getting on a Greyhound bus going, 7 hours south, right? That was like a huge turning point for myself, my family, and my trajectory. But I say all that to say I keep saying Pheasant. I worked at a school called the Pheasant School in Massachusetts. Sorry, I got dad brain sometimes. But Fishburne Military School, I went there my junior and senior year, and it was an all-male high school, a military boarding school at that. So it taught you like JROTC and, all the things around leadership and things around like, being a patriot, right? And, all those different things. And so it was really a great thing. And then from there, I went to Hampden-Sydney College, a predominantly white liberal arts college where I played basketball at from 2006, 2010. And I was another all-male college. So I went to Hampden-Sydney is one of 4 all-male colleges in the country. So we got Morehouse, of course, in Atlanta, Hampden-Sydney. We have another school called Wabash in Indianapolis, and another school, I think St. Thomas, somewhere in Minnesota. So only 4 left in the country of all-male institutions. And so I had a particular experience, it's a purview of like going to all-male colleges and schools and things like that kind of led me to this point. Then I mentioned the Pheasant School once. The Pheasant School was a school I interned after I graduated college in Massachusetts, in Boston, another all-male K-9 school that my mentor secured that internship. And I was assistant teaching like 2nd grade at that time. So I say all that to say I've had a litany, a myriad of experiences like being in all-male spaces. And so now to be overseeing a program that's geared towards serving men of color, Black and brown specifically at the collegiate level, is something that, I hold near and dear. Is something that, that I'm just honored to have the divine assignment to do. So I can go on about some of the work that I do, but I definitely will stop there and let you kind of, interject if you have any other questions, bro.
Yeah. So I mean, I know you talked about, feeling like it's that divine presence, that divine calling in regards to the work that you do. But could you talk a little bit more about why is it important for you specifically to do this male advocacy work?
Right.
What gives, like, what is it that makes you the you know what I mean? Like that makes it important to you.
Yeah.
To do this.
First and foremost, again, having a Black father, having a dad in my life, having my wife, having a lot of just male mentors, from coaches to to just, OGs on the block giving me game, being a hooper in Harlem in my neighborhood. I grew up at Polo Grounds, a area in New York City. It used to be the old Giant Stadium, for all my Californians, right? Giant Stadium is now in San Francisco, but the original stadium was in Harlem. It's called Polo Grounds. And so they tore the stadium down in the 50s and built my projects after they demolished the stadium. And so, for me, so, just being all through my time, like I had a bunch of just reinforcement. Right? My father, he was a historian in his own right. We had pictures of Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, MLK on our wall, the Harlem Renaissance, right? So every day I got reinforcement from like just black male leaders in my home, right? We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. We couldn't escape each other. I saw MLK, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey every day, right? And so there's a quote that I remember even to this day. It was a quote from Marcus Garvey that says, "Up, you mighty race, you may accomplish what you will." And so that passive education that I got just in my household of seeing like black male leadership in male spaces, right? And going out to the community, having the OGs give me game, really take a liking to me. I have 2 older brothers that were integral in my childhood development. When both my brothers, Hakeem and Dawu, they were like 12 and 13 respectively when I was born in 88. So they had to take on responsibilities of having a little brother and grow up kind of fast and have me around, taking me outside with them. So, and then also just my coaches and things like that. So I think as far as my education, in elementary school, I had a black male principal, and that was an adult. And when I was a kid, with the, with my homies back in the day, we took that for granted because in Harlem, you around black people all day.
Yeah.
So, there's a particular, you don't take it, you don't understand the privilege that you have as a black person to be immersed in your own culture. Your people get to see your reflection. Of course, we had a lot of issues in regards to just poverty, be growing up in the projects, the lack of resources, access, all these other things. But it was every day I got to see a reinforcement of who I was as a black person, right? And so having my first black male, educator that was the principal of our school, we used to make fun of him and call him MLK. He was shorter brother. We used to make, "Oh, get out of here, MLK." But that, his name was George Young. He's still alive to this day, but he was one of the people that kind of planted a seed in me alongside my dad and coaches and many other people. And then of course, like, my brothers, when I remember being young and, being younger, I would go hoop at Rucker Park. I live right across the street from Rucker Park, so I would hoop there every day. And it was one of those things where, like, growing up in that environment, there's a lot of peer pressure. There's a lot of, different, opportunities to get involved with, all other types of things that were negative and detrimental to your future, just because we didn't have resources, right? Of course, people make choices and things like that, but those choices of folks, hustling or drug dealing or gangbang or whatever is pretty much predicated on a lack of resources and financial stability, right? And family structure, all these different things, right? So, growing up, my brothers were very, they were on me a lot. They had me under their wing. My brother would say like, "Yo, be a leader, not a follower." And I was like 8 years old. What you mean be a leader, bro? I'm 8, bro. I want to hang out. I want to get fresh. I want to wear the J's. I want to, I want to be a leader at 8 years old. What are you talking about?
Trying to lead the way to the lunch line.
Yeah, who am I leading, bro? I'm leading people to the lunch line, lead people to the assembly, like to the, like what's going on? So, but that was something that was reinforced me every day about just like, choosing to be different, choosing to dare to dream, right? Having an imagination, think about your future, all those different things, right? And being more like, even though we grew up in this environment, you can be so much more. Like, your location isn't your destination. So those things, in regards to the education and just that work, right? I had a bunch of love poured into me, right? Like, and I think from my family, first and foremost, being the first educators, right? Pouring me that love from home, mom and dad, both pouring into me, with my gifts and allowing me to be curious, allowing me to make mistakes and things like that along the way. And just the community, right? Of being in New York City, Harlem, and the education piece of having folks that saw the potential in me, right? And saw that I had a gift and wanted to make sure that they push me into spaces and the places where I can utilize those gifts or learn more, be a sponge and absorb, right? You can learn from a homie that's an alcoholic on the block and get lessons, kind of like, they clone Tyrone, that alcoholic, an alcoholic that had all the game in the gyms that broke, Tyrone kept passing after he get his beer. Came from brothers like that, what I'm saying? That just was able to, there's always something you can learn from somebody, right? To the person that's an educated person, that's just a regular 9-to-5 person doing construction, whatever, having a admin assistant job. So, those are the things that really helped to shape me. And then as far as, leaving Harlem and then going to Fishburne Military School, Hampton, Sydney, I had mentors that poured into me tremendously. And then when I was at Fishburne, it was a predominantly white school. I remember when I first got there, I was like kind of second guessing my decision. Like, yo, I'm away from Harlem. I don't know anybody over here. You know what I'm saying? I'm like one of like 10 or 15 black kids. You know what I'm saying? And the funny story was that like there's this cultural differences, right? Of going from a place where you have certain cultural dynamics and social cues and things like that, and language and diction that we use, back home in the hood. So when I went to Fishburne, there was a term that they would use for new cadets. So you would have to go your first month on the school grounds. You had to go through a process of being pretty much initiated as a new cadet. You had to earn pretty much your stripes, and so you had to walk reverse in the hallways. You had to wear a different color name badge. The students that were already there for a while, their name badge was a certain color, and yours is like red. And so everybody knew you was new, and you had to have these. They call them rat rules. So you was like called a rat, right? And so as a New Yorker, I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, that was a whole different world for me. So one time I walked in the hallway, and this dude is like, yo, rat. And so I kept walking because in the hood, it's like rat means snitch. And I ain't know.
Yeah, facts. That's fighting words, basically.
That's fighting words, you know what I mean? So I'm just walking. I'm just ignoring homie. Like, rat, what you talking about, bro? He like, you, rat, turn around. So I turned around. I realized he's talking to me. So, of course, I start to get, I'm like, rat, I'm ready to roll him up. Like, what you mean? You know what I mean? So he's like, no, I don't mean that. I mean, like, you're a new student, a cadet. So, like, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, you know what I mean? So just the different, just terminology.
You better put me on game before I put you on the ground.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? So that was a whole different thing. But I had a professor who passed away, a history professor, a white man. His name was Major Hare. He was a history professor. And I remember one time I was in class, sitting kind of like toward the back of the class. I'm new. I'm like a couple weeks into the semester or whatever. And I guess he could feel that I was like kind of like maybe I was uncomfortable or kind of like, hesitant to speak up or do certain things, right? Like, or say certain things, right? And so one time I was leaving class and I was the last cadet leaving the class, and he like closed the door. He was like, look, son, you belong here. Like you belong here. You know what I'm saying? Like, like, you belong here. Don't think you don't belong here. So that was like, I was like, so after he said that, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I do belong here. So from there, I just took off, you know what I mean? Being able to, do a lot at the school. I was a high ranking cadet my second year. I was like a battalion executive officer. So that was super dope. And then going to Hampton, Sydney, I had other, mentors that poured into me. And so one of my biggest mentors that I had at the time, and to this day that I'm still close with, is Dr. Christopher B. Howard. He was the first Black president at Hampton Sydney College. And Hampton Sydney, for all of you who may not know, is one of the oldest schools in the country. It was created and founded in like 1776, or right around the time of our country's founding. Like, so it's super old. Like, it's Victorian style brick. It's a beautiful school, but it's definitely steeped in like whiteness and Eurocentric views and things like that, right? So a lot of Republican leaning things, that you kind of experience at the school. So when I'm there, I'm around Confederate flags and talking to folks about slave rights or slavery being a states' rights issue and all these type of things. So in 2008, 2009, simultaneously, while former President Barack Obama was being elected to be the president of the United States, Dr. Christopher B. Howard was being elected to be the president at Hampton Sydney. So I'm like, yo, what the? I'm like, I couldn't believe what I'm seeing. I'm like, what, the first Black president? Then we got Christopher Howard at Hampton Sydney. I'm like, yo, what's going on? Like, and of course,
that's how you feel.
Right. I'm like, yeah, that's what it felt like at the time. But now, a couple 15 years later, we definitely see what's going on out here. But at that time, it was like, yo, like, that was incredible. So I'm like, yo, how did you even get here, Black man? Like, how did you get here? So, me just kind of, I went on to him and said, hey, like, I want to learn from you. I went to his office. I'm like, look, can you be my mentor? You know what I mean? And so he's like, yeah, sure. And so, he said, of course, I'm gonna push you, challenge you. And he gave me a lot of different gems in game. And so he was actually the brother that actually connected me with the President School for my internship. And so through that mentorship connection, and he's the same brother who called me back in 2012 after I worked at the President School from 2010, 2011. I had a gap from 2011 to 2012. Couldn't find no work. I'm back home in the hood in Harlem, right? College grad, no job. Sally Mae calling me. I like to refer to Sally Mae as Sally Bay because that's how close our relationship is. But
she gonna follow. She gonna follow everywhere.
She persistent, man. She want that money.
She don't give up.
Yeah. but yeah. So it was one of them things where I was looking for work. I was out of a job, and so I was mad
Right.
at the world, like, yo, I went to school and like I don't got no damn job. Y'all done lied to me, bro. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So at the same time, he called me back. He called me. He's like, look, there's a dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion at our campus. You know, I want you to come back. Like, you know what I'm saying? And you know, the faculty love you. You know, you're an alumnus. You know, you had a really good, you know, just reputation as far as you being a student. You was an RA, you did this and that, you was a scholar athlete, blah, blah, blah. And so of course I'm kind of hesitant because I'm back in New York, but I have to, you know, he like come to Hampton, Sydney. Hampton, Sydney is located in Farmville, Virginia. It's the boonies, it's like central Virginia. So it's like, you know, it's a small town, you know, couple stoplights, you know, 4 or 5 stoplights. You on one side of town to the other side of town, right? Go past the Walmart, Motel 6, you know what I mean? So
Right.
so of course I'm hesitant. I'm like, bro, big bro, I don't know, man, leaving New York. Like, look, he gave me the big bro talk. Like, look, like black man, educator, like your story, everything you've done, you know, you would this could really propel you in a lot of ways. You know what I mean, your career and everything. So, you know, I took some time to tune in and reflect and think about, taking the opportunity, and I took that leap again, right? So jumping,
Yeah.
to take another opportunity to go back from New York City, Harlem, back to Virginia again for a second time at that time to start my journey as a as a DEI director at that time at Hampton City College, my alma mater. And so those are some of the things that really shaped it. But I think as far as from what I mean, a divine assignment, right? For me, where I'm at, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I think about my journey and my story, and there's just certain things that you are gifted with, that you are here on earth to do. And I think with my story and who I am and how I move, how people receive me, especially young brothers, a lot of people in general, but just especially young brothers, especially the things I've been able to do, I serve as inspiration, hope, you know what I mean, and leadership, right? And so just being able to pour in and really honoring that gift, right? And being able to give that to young men, because there's a dearth of just black men in education, black men in these spaces, right? That go into education, not having mentors, the brokenness in our family dynamics, and not having like a dad at home for a myriad of ways, myriad of reasons why that may be. And we'll kind of get into some of that with some of the work and things that we talk about in this conversation. But I say all that to say, like, I have that gifting and divine assignment. So when I'm doing this work, it's out of love. It's out of the love that I was given, that I'm pouring back, right? And all the mentors that I have is like, no, the biggest way to pay me back is to pay it forward. And so that's what I'm doing. So I think about all the people who poured into me, who helped to mold me, who encouraged me, who loved on me, who gave me that just that spark, right? Helped me see the things that I didn't see in myself, right? There was moments where I didn't know this Hakeem existed, right? I didn't know that I was able to do these things and, be this person and have this kind of conviction and courage and all that type of. I just thought I was Hakeem from Harlem. They lied, God got so much in store. You so much more, and they pulled it out of me. And so now I'm just giving that back tenfold. All the brothers that I serve and pour into, and give that love to. So that's the assignment, it's part of the assignment, bro. And as a father and as a husband, just being able to show brothers different sides of manhood, right? Showing them different things in regards to what it looks like to be an educator, be a father, be a spouse, be a husband, right?
Yeah.
Lead your family, right? And being able to give brothers permission to show up in a particular way with all those different hats, right? With all the things that's pulling at us as males and as men. So I'll stop there, bro, to kind of sum that up.
I think, one of the cool things is that, you talk about being able to see, right, a lot of black males in positive, roles. I talked about this in another previous episode, but I wrote my thesis just on the lack of representation of black males in higher education, right? And it talks about how many of the people that I interviewed, many of them did not have that representation of black males when they were in their K through 12 experience. And so I think it's really dope to see, what happens full circle when someone has that representation. And of course, there are other people that went to your same schools that didn't choose your same career path, but I do think it's great to see it full circle. But one of the things I kind of want to talk about or have you kind of go into a little bit is, when you think about the work that you're doing, right? Because black males or just males in general, but we're talking about specifically black males for this context, and for the conversation. They are really kind of ostracized in the field of education. And so can you think of any like long-term benefits aside from, right, you being a walking example
Sure.
of what happens when there is positive Black male role models
Mhm.
in education around a person. Could you talk about some of the long-term benefits of just male achievement as
Sure.
a whole for
Yeah.
the community, for what the family structure? Like, what are some of these long-term benefits that male achievement could potentially lead to?
Man, that's a beautiful question. I think that getting into that is talking about a potential, essentially, a counter narrative and just a counter action plan to the intentional assault on Black life and the Black thriving and Black upward mobility, right, and family structures that has been baked into policy, in this country, when it comes to the Black experience, right, all the way dating back to the '60s. There's a history of this in regards to just at the end of the day, you got to, we all got to remember that we wasn't even able and given the right to even read or write or learn, right, and so you would be lynched to even attempt to even read a book and learn. So just think
Right,
about as far as our enslavement up to now into contemporary times, but historically speaking, we have to get into the history because it's tied into where we are. Because sometimes we can look at things in a vacuum, but it's all connected to a long lineage of an assault on our people and
hmm,
particularly our males, right? That Black male assault, because as we know, we're the line of defense for our communities, right? We're the
right.
providers that we provide provision, protection, procreation, all these different things, right? And so with that, I want to kind of get into a little bit in regard to just even with the '60s, with the Brown versus Board of Education, even with those policies baked into us. Excuse me, bro.
That's all good.
Making sure everything's good with my computer. But as far as us, you know, the assault on our community, particularly when it comes to Brown versus Board and a desegregation or the integration of us into white mainstream society, right? We were able to have our own education fields, our own structures and things like that, as far as how we taught each other, right? And knowing our community, the cultural norms how we learn. We're a kinetic people, the way that we learn, having Black teachers. Back then we
Hmm.
had a larger Black, just a larger Black teacher force. And with the
For sure.
Brown v. Board Education,
Cut
like
like 80-90% of them.
I would say cut it 80-90% because just off the rip. And so now we see the trickle effect 60, 70 years later of a dearth of just Black males in the space. And it's been more of a female dominated industry, but primarily white females, right?
Right.
Female dominated from all the way from elementary up to college, right? And so you take that and then you have this disconnect and just pretty much this ineptitude when it comes to cultural competency of Black people understanding who we are on a human level, on a cultural
Hmm.
level, right? And trying to educate and teach folks, but you don't understand them, their culture, their background, how they learn, linguistics, how we speak, how we communicate both non-verbally, verbally, all these different things. You expect us to be able to thrive in these spaces is like it's just an asinine thing. And so I say all that to say when it comes to the male achievement, we have to go back to that as the nucleus as to how we got to a place where there's a dearth of Black males in education, higher education access, and then when there are Black males in the space, we see that because of school and prison pipeline, all these things happening, especially when it comes to elementary with our boys and our boys being suspended at higher rates and all these different things,
Hmm.
how that trickles into high school, middle school, being able to be on the same reading level, even in California, 75, 80, I think it was a study a couple of years ago that said like 40, 60 to 75% of boys aren't reading at grade level, at reading
Right.
level, or grade level, right? So there's an intentionality behind this, right? And I think that we definitely have to make sure that we're, honest about the intentional assault on that. So that ties into our achievement in a myriad of ways, right? In regards to not only just being able to access higher education, one, accessing it or accessing education in general, being able to be able to be humanized in the space and to be able to be authentically you and to be able to succeed, because Black males have been caricatures of Black males in regards to how we show up to spaces, right? And not being able, like, even for example, as a dad, my son, right? When I work home, when I'm remote, I take my son out like 3 times a day to the park because as young boys, you got tons of testosterone and energy just coursing through your veins. You can't sit still, right? So I'm already, as a dad and an educator, I'm already thinking about how he's going to be perceived in class, because he can't just sit still for 8 hours, 6 hours straight with like a 30-minute recess or an hour recess, but they're expecting to sit still for that long period of time, which is, again, it doesn't even make sense. It's already an environment that's going to create pretty much an outcome of where he's going to be perceived as disruptive, you know what I'm saying? Not being able
intolerable,
intolerable, all these different things, right? But the real thing is that, especially when it comes to boys and black boys specifically, they learn a certain way. They learn through play. We're kinetic people as black folks, being able to learn a particular way, having multiple opportunities to get that energy off, right? All these different things. And so just the modalities of education make it extremely challenging to support black boys and to really meet them where they are, right? The expectation that the student's supposed to adapt to the school instead of the school adapting to our babies, right? And so at the end of the day, these folks don't love us, right? So and we can't expect these folks to love us, right? We send them to our schools, right? They don't love us, right? There's not a love there, right? Some of these folks are just doing a job because they got the job, or they just a backup plan. They're trying to feed their own family. They don't love us, right? So, but the male achievement, that's all tied in, because as you cut the economic arm and just the education arm specifically, you cut the arm of brothers' upward mobility, right? Now, to say education, of course, there's a lot of different ways to get to upward mobility and being able to make more money and have jobs with living wages and being able to support your family and your community. But we all know for our people, a lot of times that mechanism is through education and higher education specifically, right? Being able to get a degree that can, like, springboarding you into a career where you can make, become somebody that's in the middle class, or, or whatever that may be, lower middle, whatever, upper middle, right? Whatever that may be, even though our class structure is just ridiculous right now, especially with inflation. It don't even matter right now. Everybody feeling it. But I say that to say our economic arm is pretty much decapitated, just cut off, because, it's one of those things where we're not able to have that education to be able to secure certain industries, certain jobs and things like that. But then also, again, with this piece in regards to just the policy, and one of the biggest things that happened is the industrialization in regards to black males having trades and things like that can get you lucrative jobs, blue collar jobs and things like that, right? So in the 60s, 70s, all these different things, the labor market shifted and pretty much labeled black men as obsolete to the labor market, because now they took the factory jobs, the brother working at GMC in Detroit, right? Working on cars, and electrician and plumbers and welding and bricklayers, all these different things. Now it went more into like administrative work, all these types of other things, right? So a lot of brothers fell through the cracks and got laid off, fell through the cracks and being able to keep up with that. And so there was an intentionality with that too. And so when it comes to the achievement piece, it's all tied in, because male achievement for black people means black community achievement, black achievement overall for our families, for our communities. And as you see, as there is a dearth of black men in these spaces as far as education, right? It's a trickle down effect, because other brothers don't want to seek don't feel inspired or liberated to pursue education, right? Because we're not there, we're not in those spaces, right? But because brothers have such harsh experience with education, it's trauma. They don't want no parts of it, right? So it's just a cyclical thing that happens, right? So with the male achievement, it ties into like us, not being able to provide for our families in a particular way. And also the other thing that happened is that we have to be honest about, is that there was an intentionality behind, even with some of the bills, the Higher Education Act, all these other things like that. You see the enrollment rates for black males have just dropped, precipitously, right, throughout the years, right, in regards to how many brothers are getting degrees at particular levels, right? So from the high school graduate, when it comes to black people, black men are graduating high school more than black women as far as peer to peer, right? But when you go into community college, when you go into 4-year university, it dips by the hundreds of thousands, right? So there's something that's happening at that point when it comes to high school and the higher education, right? For young men, black men, to be able to secure and to secure and get a degree in college. And so we have to ask ourselves, what's really happening there? What's some of those pieces in regards to how colleges are not serving black men in a particular way, right? Not serving us in a particular way. And I think part of that is, we have a lot of different just tentacles to this. It's a lot of nuance. And so part of it is now that we have, more Black women that are being have access and taken advantage of that access, right? And have more degrees. That has now created an environment where Black men and women, I always say this, our education has been weaponized against us in an intentional way to divide us as Black men and women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Us coming together, right? Being able to provide, be able to build families, and that's a part of the assault as well. As far as seeing now we have a situation where it's like if a brother doesn't have a college degree, then he's not marriage material or whatever. But being college educated doesn't make you a good partner, right? So
Right.
because of what's going on and how we valued that college degree to a certain point, if we attach it to your marriage ability, right? That's caused a rift between us, right? A Black man and Black woman. So now a brother or
That's
sister,
never been the case in the past.
in the past, that was never the case, right? So now we have this dynamic where, like, if you don't got a degree, then I can't rock with you with it. For both Black men and Black women, but particularly with Black men, because it's not that many of us in the space, right? It's definitely harming our community, right, in a particular way. And so there's a lot that's happening in an intentional way. And so that when I say all that to say, when it comes to malachievement, us being able to not only access education, but access education that serves us, right, in a particular way that helps us, especially what was going on right now in our society, in our country, right? We're not being educated, educated well enough to be able to even transition into the workforce, right? And so being able to have education and being able to get have a curriculum that serves Black people, primarily Black men, on how do we gain the requisite skills to be able to be competitive in the workforce, right? Right now we have AI, Chat GPT, all these different things, all these different skills, still our blue collar skills, right? We need to bring back trades and things like that, right? So brothers can be able to access those things, right? Computer technology, IT, STEM, all these fields, all these different things that's happening, right? And so with that male achievement, we're better able to not only just serve our families, but we're better equipped to serve our communities and come up with solutions, right? And so with that male achievement, that means that our sisters are better off, our babies are well off, our community is well off, we can thrive. But without that, without us being able to be in position to like have that upward mobility, our community is going to continue to be in shambles. It has been for the last 50 or 60 years. As you look at marriage rates, look at the lack of higher education, access, jobs and things like that, is only just having our society at odds, our community at odds with each other right now. There's a lot of stuff going on in regards to just that positive reinforcement of Black males, helping them to see value in education. A lot of Black men are like saying the other piece is the financial piece, right? We got to tie that in, because education, with inflation right now, education is one of the most expensive. When it comes to inflation rates, education has one of the highest inflation rates of all industries, right? So over like 30, 40 years, education has gone up 1,000% as far as tuition costs are. So when you think about the other piece is that on the other honest conversation as educators, and we're in the field, we know that some of these degrees don't yield the right amount of income to be able to sustain, right? Living in California with a history degree, it's not going to work, right? So how do we make sure that our brothers who are in these spaces understand the ramifications of picking a particular major and pathway that can yield a better, economic situation long term, to be able to provide, for your family. So that's another thing. So a lot of people are now, especially Black men, we've seen throughout COVID, the pandemic, a lot of brothers are now not valuing it the same, because like, yo, if I'm gonna go to school for 4 or 5 years, 6 years, go in debt $50,000 to $100,000, $150,000 and get a degree in liberal arts and liberal studies, while I'm only making $45,000, I'm already in the red, $100,000, and I got to try to figure out how to buy a home, be a homeowner, to take care of my family, this and that. So there's a lot. It's not worth it. So there's a lot of things that we got to factor in, and that's another thing around education that we're having as far as practitioners. Because the writing's on the wall, and so we see our enrollment declining, particularly with the Black community and Black men, because that's another thing that brothers are like, I can go get a certificate somewhere, I can go and do this now, I can be on YouTube making a bag, I could play video games and be on Twitch or Kick or whatever I could be on and make money now, rather than investing that into my education. So there's a lot to it, but I say all that to say, when it comes to male achievement, it's synonymous with Black community thriving, right? Until we get to a place, where our Black men are in position to lead, in position to be the leaders of our communities, that our families in a particular way, and being able to provide. That's the essence of us as you know that God gave us. And until we get to that space, our community will continue to be in shambles.
So one of the things you talked about that I want to, kind of just touch on again is, when we talked about what happened when the Brown versus Board of Education, and
Right.
how, like 80-90%, I think it was Dr. Bettina Love that talks about
Yeah.
how like 90% of our, our educators, our Black educators, they lost their jobs. And so due to like, integration. And so what happened was we saw this shift in who was educating our children. So it
Yeah.
went from being Black men and women who were educating our children in K through 12 to white women
Right.
educating our children in K through 12. And you touched on this again. I'm just going to highlight it again, is that there is a difference in learning style
Yep.
that between men and women, between
Yep.
boys and girls, males and females. There's just a different learning style. For women, they are more, they learn better at times when they're, stationary, when they're, what I mean, they have someone instructing them, then they can kind of learn a lot from that form of learning, right?
That
Sit
modality.
down, that structure.
Yep.
But with males, it's very different, right? Some of them have to be able, they have this testosterone that's building up, that's energy that they have to be able to release while they're doing it. And so many of them are like kinesthetic learners. They learn from doing and learning at the same time. They're processing it.
Yep.
And so when you have that kind of structure where one person is learning from this style and another, or one person teaches from this style and another person learns from this style, there's this clash. And so what happens in the field, what happened over time, is that we found that our children were being disciplined. Our Black males specifically were being disciplined disproportionately because of their learning style being different than that of their educators. And so it's really important to understand that, because even Dr. Luke Wood has this research that that came out back, I believe, in 2018, that talked about the there's two school districts in Sacramento County alone that are in the top 3 of suspension rates of Black students. And the majority of those suspension rates were for what's called willful defiance. So when you think about why our Black men are being pushed out of the system of education, it's because of those that are educating them, one, don't have a similar learning style. So therefore the teaching style isn't contributing to success. It's actually contributing to dysfunction. And then they grow up in this particular system. So when they become an adult, because again, as you mentioned earlier, when you talk about the actual number, our Black men are graduating high school at a decent rate.
Yes.
It's not like they're graduating high school at an alarmingly low rate compared to other things. So they're graduating a lot in the numbers. But what happens is when they get the freedom to choose what they want to do for the rest of their life, many of them don't choose education because they're saying, this is a place where I was punished. This is a place where I was hated. I was demeaned. I couldn't feel comfortable in my own skin because I had to behave in a way that wasn't conducive. And I'm against this in regards to just the styles that we learn as a whole, or that we teach it as a whole in education, because oftentimes we are only benefiting people who learn from reading. What about people who learn from audio? What about people who learn from visually, right? What there are a variety of different styles. Now, reading may be one of the best, right? Understandable, but also the best for who, right? If reading is, I'm not saying that reading is not necessary, it's not important. Of course, I work in education, right? I understand that reading is critical. But what I am saying is that since the beginning of education's conception, we have literally been teaching one style of education since its conception. Can you imagine if you had the iPhone 1 right now, how much outdated you would be, right? So we have to understand as a society that if we want our men to be successful, be more successful in the field of education, we have to be willing to adapt to their learning style, as opposed to only rewarding people who learn from one particular style in one particular way.
Mhm.
So I definitely wanted to highlight that.
For sure. And I wanted to also add too, if you don't mind, bro, what you're
Sure.
spot on. I think, and as we tie that into standardized testing and
Ooh, talk about it.
standardized testing and like the school of prison pipeline, right? We know that, it's projected that if a student is not reading at third grade, not reading at the third grade reading level, particularly for Black boys, they're already forecasted to be in prison, right? At
Right.
high school, and going into their early adulthood, right? And so there's something as far as that punitive, that dysfunctional modality of elementary school that's serving as a conveyor belt into prison. And it's so wild because it's just so nefarious is how there's a disproportionate brothers of Black men being suspended in college, and then you look at in mass incarceration, disproportionately Black males are the ones who are making up a certain 6-7% of the population, 8%, particularly of the Black population, right? Like 15% of us now, maybe 7-8% now, but making up damn near 30% of incarcerations, right? So there's a direct correlation into those people. Of course, there's other environmental factors, but when it comes to the ways in which schools are set up and that school of prison and pipeline,
Yeah.
there's a correlation there that we got to make sure that we also recognize in regards to like those outcomes for Black males specifically.
100%. 100%. It's very critical,
Yep.
to what the future,
Mhm.
looks like in regards to men in education. And I think that the more we're willing to adapt, it's funny. And just this is kind of, it's funny that education is one of those places where when the student fails, we blame the student
Blame the
as
student.
opposed to the teacher.
The teacher. Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
like usually it's like, yo, if I saw a dog that didn't listen, I'm like, that's a bad trainer.
Right.
Like, I blame the trainer. I don't blame the dog, because it's like
Right.
the dog is only going to do what it's allowed to do.
That's
But
right.
if I blame the trainer, so like, why do we blame the students for why do we blame the students when they're not as successful within education as they should be? I feel like it's the teacher's fault. The
Yep.
teacher needs to do a better job at educating
Yep.
with them. But that just popped in my head randomly.
You're absolutely right, bro. That's exactly what it is, man. We got
Yeah,
as far as the accountability there, it's one of the only places we look at it from that lens, right? If you a parent, you have your kid come out certain ways, like, yo, what happened with the parents? What was y'all doing? Like,
exactly. A business. Imagine a business, right? Like, if you had a
yeah,
business and the business failed, and the
yo,
owner
their
was like,
employees,
all y'all employees are terrible, I'm firing all y'all. You'd be like, no, 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 no. We followed your leadership.
right, right,
You're the first one to go. Before we get rid of all the employees, we gonna get rid of you,
that part.
because you were the leader of this. So it's like, it's interesting that in
Right,
education,
it's
one of the few places that they blame the subordinates as opposed to the actual
that part.
the
Talk about it,
leader.
bro. Talk about it. That part.
um I do want to kind of go, because I know we're pushing time, and it's a little late for us right now. Again, y'all gonna see this, it's not gonna be that late, but it's a little late for us. And my man, like he said, he's a husband, he's a father, he's a scholar, so he
Yeah,
got other jobs.
really knocked out, man. So
You
I'm
know
gonna
what I'm
make sure my
saying?
voice,
Exactly. I'm trying to make sure he ain't on punishment when he leave here.
I won't
You
be the
feel
dog
me?
house, bro. It's all good. I
So so
appreciate you.
so I do want to kind of ask these last couple questions
Of
here,
course. Yeah,
and
sure.
what we'll do is we can follow up with a part two
Okay.
again, because I know, like, we got a lot. This is our what Hakeem does, what I study, what he studies. Like, this is our passion. This is because we see what the end result is going to be. Like he talked about earlier, we see the writing on the wall. And so
Yes.
if we don't come to a fix very soon,
Yes.
and I was doing this when he was saying, Black women getting educated, and then saying that you have to have a particular education level to date a Black woman. And again, I see that that's a clash right there, because we've never had that. And what's going to
Manufactured
ultimately,
class.
what I'm saying, exactly. And so what's going to happen is it's going to lead to dysfunction, right? It's going to lead to the collapse of our our family structure and our family dynamic. And a lot of people feel like it already has collapsed, but we're not there yet. But it can, if it continues down this road, it's going to be even worse than what it's ever been.
Yes, yes.
So that's super important. So we will definitely have a follow up to
Yeah,
this one. But
me
what
too.
I wanted to do is, could you, if you wouldn't mind, what's one piece of advice or one piece of information that you can give to other people to help them kind of comprehend
Sure.
the male's experience in education? I know you touched on it a little bit
Yeah.
already in regards to like the suspensions, in regards to
Yeah.
the different styles, but if there was just some other information that you can give to kind of give people the idea to comprehend what how does a male or a black male specifically, how do they experience in education?
Yeah, so I think, as far as like, so to make sure I clarify, so you want me to speak on like pretty much how they can learn how to support black males in education, or like talk about the male experience from my perspective. Make sure I'm clear on your
From your
question.
perspective, yeah, from your perspective.
Okay, so as far as this, a couple of things. There's a couple that I think to help folks understand like the experience of black males. There's a lot of things. I think we have the privilege of having all these devices, the media, and a lot of
Hmm.
it now too is not really mainstream media too, right? Some of it, there's a lot of conversations around, the black male experience that doesn't hit the mainstream for a particular reason.
Right,
And,
because they know.
and they know, right? And so, and I think that that's because they want to keep this chaos going within our community. So I say that to say, there's a couple of books, but I want to get into maybe some podcasts that for all my visual and listeners and stuff like that.
Sure.
There's a great brother, by the name of T. Hassan Johnson. He created
Yeah.
we have a couple different things, right? So we have brothers in education in different sectors are coming out to talk about their experience as black men, right? Some will call it the black manosphere, but it's brothers who are like tangentially or adjacent to the black manosphere who are not like speaking more so about like relationships, but more so the black male experience with education and like what's going on around humanizing black men. And so for anybody that's looking for that information or just want to learn more about it, I would say that's one brother, T. Period Hassan Johnson. He works at Fresno State. He went to Dominguez. He's a professor in Africana Studies. He
Yeah.
actually wrote a book on anti-black misandry. Anti-black misandry is a term that has been we've heard of, misogyny, right? Especially
Hmm.
education. So let me pause there since my brain's working. So with education, one of the things we got to talk about is the framing of black men, right? So
Talk
education,
about it.
higher ed specifically, has been the number one, pretty much progenitor of theories and creation of theories that center black men as the oppressors of the black community.
Man.
And so we look at like the first wave feminism, the second wave feminism, right? A lot of feminism was rooted in white women having issues with their white men, but wanted to pretty much tag black women along into that to say, hey, we're both women. Let's pretty much overthrow stuff was going on with this power dynamic with men. But it was more so about the social hierarchy as it pertains to whiteness and being somebody that's African American or black, formerly enslaved, right? And so there was a whole bait and switch and kind of like this wool over the eyes that happened with feminism with a lot of our sisters in regards to the field of education too, that now when it comes to theories in regards to like intersectionality, or if it comes to just feminist theories and things like that pretty much center black men as the aggressors and ones, and we are perpetrators of harm, right?
Right.
Domestic
Right.
violence, all the different things in regards to media and all these different things. So with education specifically, with these theories, especially for somebody like Josiah and I who have our master's degrees, and potentially we talked about it offline. We probably get our EDDs and PhDs at some point, right? It'd be
Yes,
cool to
sir.
be called doctors, right? As black men, right? Put some respect on our names in a particular.
Talk about it.
Even with that, with the work, a lot of things that we had to study, a lot of the stuff that we studied, we had to learn like different theories around feminist theory. We didn't learn anything about, and most of the work came from women talking about speaking on the male's experience, but as from a female lens. So we didn't have a lot of authors, like black male authors, that we can like use or like had in the curriculum that we can learn about the black male experience from a black man, right? That's like
Right.
a black man. It's like this is what the black female experience is like, but I'm not a black female. I can only give you what I see and what I think, but I'm not a black female, so I can't even tell you I can tell you what I see, but I can't tell you what the experience is. So education was higher education specifically with these theories have then took the information, and I would call it an indoctrination, respectfully, like, that's what it is, what I'm seeing,
Literally. Yeah.
right? Indoctrination in regards to like centering black men in a negative light in a particular way as the ones who are oppressing the black community, and holding our women in low regard, right?
Yeah,
all these different things, right? So so think again. So we have again this influx of like particularly our sisters going into higher education, right? At the same time, these theories are being introduced at the same time, and so a lot of our sisters and our men are getting this information. Even for black men, a lot of us were like black feminists for a minute. We didn't even we were like reading stuff. We kind of felt like what was going on, but we couldn't even speak out about it a lot at certain points because it was like, you want to be respectful and not ruffle any feathers, but it was pretty much talking about how black males are pretty much the ones leading with rape and domestic violence. We know the data shows that domestic violence and intimate partner violence in our community is bi-directional, which means it's pretty much happening at the same rate,
both,
black women. But because black men have been shaped as the aggressors and the perpetrators, then we don't experience harm the same way. And so you can't really even humanize black men in a particular way to see that they actually experience harm on the hands of women, right?
Yeah.
And plus, men are so strong, and that we infantilize.
Supposed to just take it.
Yeah, we're supposed to just take it, right? Well, we have all types of things that happen, from physical abuse, verbal, emotional, all types of things, right? Even in, I think, like in the 70s, 80s, there was actually a couple years in a row where actually the domestic violence stats where black women were harming black men at a higher rate. So we don't talk about that because
was this. I don't mean to interrupt, but there was this interesting. There was this interesting study that came out, I believe, in 2014 that talked about that men are actually more victims of abuse than
we don't
women.
report it. Yeah, because first of all, as men, we are taught not to report that. We're taught that we if somebody hits us or do whatever, don't hit them back, or you just accept it. Like, you don't want to. We've been socialized not to express our emotions, say we've been harmed, do certain things. There's a lot of things that black men that we have to heal from and work on in regards to how we've been socialized and how we define manhood and all these different things, right? So what that does, when things do happen and do arise, we don't. Like, even for example, if you say, I was touched, for a black male, like it's perceived or known that you wanted to be touched. Like, why not? Right. You're a black boy, 8, 9 years old. Right. You want to be physically.
And they question your masculinity.
Yeah, you question your masculinity. You didn't want that. You don't want a woman to touch you. Like, I'm 8 years old now. I want to go play Pokemon. Like, we go hoop. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm thinking that way, but because black boys have been perceived as men, as boogeymen, right? Even historically, Emmett Till to Charles Stinney, looking at somebody as being perceived as you want to sexually overtake them as a boy, right? So all these things are baked into all of those different things. So I say all that to say it's important that for anybody who wants to understand the black male experience is that you have to really get supplemental, pretty much information that's pretty much a counter narrative to what we've been given in higher education through feminism. So what that looks like is a podcast. T.S. Johnson, he just wrote a book through Rutledge around anti-black misandry. Anti-black misandry essentially is, hatred for black men or contempt for black men in a particular way. So we have misogyny for black women and anti-black misandry for black males, right? The terminology is coming more popularized, right? And so T.S. Johnson, he has that book on Rutledge, but he also has a podcast that you can see on YouTube. He streams often. There's so much material in regards to just the black male experience from K-12, K-20, from corporate settings. He has a bunch of different educators on his page that come to his podcast. So I would just encourage you to listen to that, take it in. It might, for a lot of you that listen to it, you might be like, yo, this is crazy. You might get upset. You might have a little bit of cognitive dissonance because this is a counter narrative that you never really heard or was exposed to, right? So, and then also for black men in the space, they may say certain things that you may not be comfortable with. You may not like the tone, but just I don't want you to focus more so on the tone. I want you to focus more on the message, because sometimes we get into this conversation.
True though. Did I speak facts?
Speak facts. And we have to, as black people, we have to learn to be able to eat the meat and throw away the bones. You feel me? So per se. So that's one person. Then we have Tommy Curry, who wrote this book called The Man Not. He has a bunch of his research on anti-black misandry. he pretty much got outed in higher education in the States. And he had to go all the way to like Edinburgh, Scotland to like start teaching, and created a black male studies department. So now we have like a black male studies like field of study. So now he's a philosopher, got his PhD, a great researcher. And so he wrote this book called The Man Not that talks about race, class, and genre that dates about, is pretty much telling you things about feminism and giving you counter narratives in regards to how these things have situated black men in a particular way to be harmed, to not humanize them, to dehumanize black men, to make them more disposable. We throw away black men like it's nothing, right? We don't see the humanity in them in a particular way. So he also has a podcast. We have a couple other brothers online. We have Travis Hood Scholar. We have a couple other brothers. We have Torian Walker. So all these social media and like just things that you can follow. I just finished watching a brother named Phil Scott. He has his podcast called African Diaspora News, but he also has something in regards to like the Phil Scott podcast where he's talking about the black experience in general, but also black men as it pertains to like politics. Because another conversation that's happening now is that black people in our politics, and when it comes to black men and black women, there's a huge enclave of black folks who are leaving the Democratic Party because they've been negligent. There's been a benign neglect in the black community, particularly with black men. A lot of the policies have been from Biden with the 94 crime bill, being a huge proponent of the crime bill, having our brothers locked up in droves.
He never apologized for it.
Never apologized, no redress, no nothing, right? So all these different things the Democrat Party has done to us that has decimated the black family intentionally, right? But we just, as black folks, we've been told, vote for them because, that's what black people do.
Because they're not Republicans.
They're not Republican. They're not as racist. You know what I'm saying? You got to choose the lesser of two evils. Why we got to choose evil in the first place. You know what I mean? So that's another conversation. But I'm saying to say that there's a lot of stuff in that podcast that Phil Scott has that talks about like why black men are like, and a lot of black women and black men are leaving the Democratic Party. And a lot of that in regards to policies, education, that we see, right? In California, we just talked about this with Josiah and myself, like in regards to some of the policies. As a father, I'm looking at like what's going on in regards to these policies when it comes to educating our black babies and having our rights stripped away as parents because we may not agree or may not want to affirm our kids a particular way at 5 years old, right? And so there's a lot of things there that will help you to understand the black male experience too and how we relate to each other. Of course, there's different books. Like I said, The Man Not is one. The anti-misandry book by Tia San Johnson. And I think also just having more conversations and having more dialogue with black men, and in particular with your brothers, your cousins, these having real conversation about and just listening.
Yeah.
Like being an active listen, not
to respond.
To respond.
You know what I'm saying?
So just have real honest conversations about our experiences and what's going on, particularly as it pertains to like our family structures. Black men being torn away from their families, right? There's a perception that there's not a deadbeat dads out here, but there's a lot of stuff that's happening that we see in the data that black men are actually the most progressive, the most active in as far as fatherhood. Period.
When allowed.
You know what I'm saying? We also are the number one population that's taking on other women's kids. Like we are open to being stepfathers, right? Other communities aren't open to those type of things, right? Like. So we take on other people's kids as our kids because we believe in community. And so there's a lot of talks in regards to that piece as well. And so just having real conversations and like just listening to like really take it in instead of like listening to respond. So there's a couple things. So you got the social media piece as far as the YouTube that you can listen to, watch videos. There's great content out there. And then also, a couple of books that you can, tap into as well. But there's, I think, again, those real conversations that we need to have with each other is, I think those are the most essential and most critical because you really get to, have conversation on a human level with somebody that that's close to you, that can give you some insight as to like what they're experiencing. So those are a couple of things that I think of.
And I appreciate that. And I think I've been, hip to Dr. Tia San Johnson. There's a page that I follow on YouTube called We Need to Talk. He has an interview. Yeah, he has an interview with Tia San Johnson on there. And that's what kind of put me onto him a little bit more, just to get more in-depth information. And Alan from, We Need to Talk, I definitely support you. So keep doing what you're doing because I feel like you're actually, you're genuinely trying to get to a solution to the whole thing. But one of the beautiful things about which is even what We Need to Talk does is they have real conversation. And I think sometimes it's almost like you have to remind the people who are having the conversation that you're listening to what I'm saying and listening to understand instead of listening to respond. Because if you only listen to what I'm saying to respond, it's that emotion that's going to cause you to
Yep.
react to what I'm saying as opposed to trying to comprehend it, not so that you can counter it, but comprehend it so that you can receive it and say, okay. And I think you touch on this a lot of times. People will hear something, and because they don't like it, they dismiss it. And it's like, just because you don't like it, it doesn't make it not true, right?
Right.
I am not going to play in the NBA. I don't like it.
Right.
I want to be on LeBron James's level. I don't like it, but that doesn't make it not true. So if
Right.
somebody comes up to me and says, you'll never be as tall as Steph Curry and you'll never be, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
in the NBA, I as difficult as it might be for me to hear it, it's the truth, right?
Mm.
And so I can spend my life trying to be 6'3" and trying to shoot three-pointers for the next X amount of years that I'm on this planet, or I can take what they say and
Right.
say, you know what, I may never be in the NBA, but maybe I could talk about it on YouTube. Maybe
Right.
I could talk about, you know what I'm saying? Maybe I could write a book about it, how I wanted to be in the NBA. Maybe I could teach my kids how to play. I don't know, whatever it is, but I'm just saying, just because you don't like what's being said, it doesn't make it not true. And it doesn't mean it's not helpful
Sure.
to how you operate in society, to how you communicate with one another. And oftentimes our black male voices are minimized, they
Yep.
are muted,
Needed.
they are pushed to the side
Right.
because many of our black men don't rally in a sense around each other. Like we were talking about this before, like when many of us don't show off the things that we're doing because we're so busy doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like that. And so when you look at who's getting the most attention online, even from the music perspective, right? Let's just dumb it down. Let's go
Right.
just from music, right? Majority of music is purchased by women. It's consumed
Yep.
by women, which is why the majority of the music is made for who? For women, right? So when you understand that who it's being catered towards, right? You can see that the audience, how they can feel like their everything revolves around them. But there's this other group of people who aren't being catered to, who still have an opinion on the way society is being run. We
Mhm.
just don't listen to them. So there are people, like you said, like Tia San Johnson, like
Yep.
We Need to Talk. There's these, but because they're not the number one streaming person,
Yep.
we don't even know that they exist because there's so much out there that's going to give you what you want as
Algorithm.
opposed to what you need, because that's what the algorithm feeds. If you like certain type of music, they're going to feed you certain type of music. They are not going to send you, if you like hip hop, they are not about to send you rock and roll, because they know rock and roll won't make you keep listening.
That's a fact.
So just pay attention to what, have these conversations and listen to what the men are saying,
Yes.
so that you can really gain perspective to
Yes.
possibly move forward. So I think that was super, super
For
critical for
sure.
you.
And I think that's great. I want to make sure I say this too, because you sparked that thought. I think when it comes to that too, we have to be mindful and always think about outcomes and data and statistics. What has
Right.
happened is, especially because of how black folks, we have the number, we have the most degradation and traumatic experience you can think about through enslavement. And so we are an emotional people naturally, and so and
Right.
through our trauma, right? So even more exacerbated through our trauma. And so there's the puppet masters of pulling these strings on our emotions to where it's more about how I feel, you know what I mean, rather than like I feel like this, I feel like men do this, or I feel like that, or I feel like this is going on. There's a time
But
for
they actually don't, based on the statistics.
based on the statistics. So I think part of the conversation is that we need to make sure that we are understanding what the data is saying, the statistics are saying, because you can feel how you want to feel, and I'm respect how you feel to a certain degree, right? So one of the things that's big right now that we're talking about, and just know, like for me, like everything that I'm saying today, like, and what I'm saying is that, like, just know, like, I'm a person that, like, I honor our community. I honor our men, our women. I want to see us thrive, and I want to see us. I want to see the Black future be something that's a utopia, right? And something that we can just, be full in our Blackness, right? So what I'm about to say is that, right, when it comes to the data, there are conversations that's happening in mainstream media that are just straight lies, right?
Literally. Yeah, that's
Literally,
a fact.
the lies are so egregious that because we feel this way, we take it as fact and then we run with it and just pass it on, pass it on, pass it on. But it's a straight lie. So, for example, just to dial into what I'm saying, kind of draw a clear picture, is that,
I wonder if you're gonna talk about the Black women out earning Black
of
men.
course, Tyler Perry.
Because I know I've looked it up so many times, and every time I hear it, I'd be like,
bro, I know
where are they getting this number
right.
from?
Tyler Perry, which I thought he had great intentions. I think part of his message was right in regards to like, hey, like, at the end of the day, like, because of folks earning a certain amount of money, especially, you can't expect, if you're making 200,000 a year, you can't expect the man to make 5,000, five times more than that, which is damn near $1 million. With just knowing that statistically,
right,
the medium household income for Black folks like 40-something, 50-something thousand a year, right? So if you know that statistically, that can help you kind of contextualize the economic conditions of our people. So now when you go into dating, you don't have these unrealistic expectations of somebody, because you know that, damn, like, if I got a sister or brother making 70, 80, they like in the 8% to 5% bracket of Black people.
You better hold on. You better hold on.
So there's this warp reality that's going on because we don't have the data. You better hold on, for real. We don't have the data, so you just go. I need somebody making 500,000. But so that's 1% of people in this country. So, but even when it comes to Black folks, even with Brother Josiah said, the Tyler Perry stuff, but Black women making out earning, that's not true. That is a lie. That's not true. And it's in the statistics. So the website I'm gonna give y'all is called blackdemographics.com. You pay like $1 every couple of months to like make sure they continue to do the research that they do. They got research on Black marriage, education, right? Employment, economics, all these different things, right? So Black men earn on average $46,000 a year. Black women earn $41,000, right? It's only a $5,000 difference, but that's still significant because there's the narrative that Black women are out earning Black men, which is not true, right? There's certain percentages when it comes to certain things in regards to, even that's taken in the totality, even if you got a degree or not. You know what I mean? It don't matter if you got a degree, right? That's just what the data is showing. Insane. So we have to understand that, like, we have to understand. So now we're taking these things and running with, saying like Black men ain't earning this and they gotta do more and make more money. And if you ain't making it, or Black women got to do this, but the data is the data, right? So even what our outcomes, understanding Black male outcomes, when it comes to life expectancy for Black men, right? We have the shortest life expectancy out of everybody in this country. Why? Because we have been degraded to just be used for our utility, our strength, our grit, working ourselves to the bone. John Henry is working ourselves to death, not grinding. Me and Josiah were just talking about feeling guilty for resting, right? Man. All these different things, right? Using rest as resistance, right? But like a lot of that is going on our health outcomes, right? From cancer, homicide, all these are important statistics that we need to know, that as far as like that can help you have a clearer picture of what we're up against and what's going on out here. There's a lot of lies being spewed and intentionally to keep us divided and keep us at odds. It works in favor of the system, and Black men and women don't unite, create families, and have that nation building, right? So for me as a husband and father, there's nothing more that brings me more pride than to walk around my Black ass family and knowing that I'm just like giving the system a middle finger and doing what I'm doing as far as the work that I'm doing, and also trying to find solutions for our community, right? And having us understand what our positioning is and how we can come together to really understand what we're up against, how we can work together to change our future in the Black community. So I just wanted to say that too. So blackdemographics.com, make sure I hit that up, because and I know statistics can be a little daunting, it's numbers and charts and graphs, but I think you need to look at that as far as a resource. You can see the data. Marriage, for example, Black people only married at 33%. We used to be married at a rate of 85% in this country. Man, 60, 70 years ago. So simultaneously with the Democratic Party and all of that, what's happening with the breakdown of Black family? What's going on here? We have to have this conversation, and not having that.
Who benefits from that?
Who benefits from that? Who
gets double taxes?
Who's vulnerable from that? What happens from that? The outcomes of the children,
Right.
from not having a two-parent household, all these different things where we have to really think about, what's going on and have a clear picture of these things. So I'll stop right there, good brother.
No, I love that because it's always funny because there has been this narrative like of black women out earning black men, and every time I always just do my research and look it up, and I'll be like, maybe I'm tripping. Maybe
Right.
all the data that I'm looking at is wrong. But I'm like, it's hard for me to see. So I'm just glad you saying this on here, which again I already knew for sure, but I'm just glad that you brought it up
Of course.
because it sparked me when you was like, I'm a bring. So I was like, is it that
Well, you
lie?
know,
So
bro.
because there's a lot of lies out there when it comes to just a lot, and so it's good to do
We have
your own
good intentions.
research
We got to make
for
sure we're
sure.
accurate. You know what I'm saying? And what's really
Exactly.
going on, because you can still, perpetuate things that just aren't true, that continues to contribute to this
The
narrative. Like,
dysfunction.
you can't pay the light bill, all this type, all this type of stuff, right? So I
Right.
mean, if you
Right.
making, even and here's the other thing, right? 100K, even it used to be have to make six figures. I need 100,000. That ain't in California. 100,000 ain't nothing no more. It's nothing.
It's
It's
nothing.
taxes. The tax rate is 37, then 36, 37% in California. So 100,000, you get like 65, 70,000 that you can utilize. You ain't even making it. So, and with inflation, there's all these other things that we have to factor in with black folks. And we are actually, especially without, being the racial wealth gap that we have to consider, we have to be very mindful of that when it comes to how we relate to each other and see value in each other, right? It's not all about, of course, finances are important, but we got to understand, like, one, especially with black men, what are the things, and black men specifically, what are the things that are serving as obstacles for black men to even have secure employment, livable wages, right? We got brothers in prison who getting pennies on a dollar for work, for
For the
free
same
labor,
work.
for the same work, making cell phones that we use, all this type of stuff, right? So we have to really think more critically about this, man, and have a really serious conversation.
100%, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And the last question that I'm gonna ask before I go ahead and we get out of here
Yeah.
is, we've been doing, as I'm sure y'all know, we have been doing Wise Word Wednesday since October of 2017. So we are about to come up on year number 7 that we have been providing you all with Wise Word Wednesdays every single week. So it's super exciting, but we try to leave people with some information that we feel can help them, right? The purpose of this show is to give people more information about or insight to what's going on behind the scenes that maybe they wouldn't know much about. So my last question to you is, if there was a wise word that you could leave this audience with about anything in life that you think is important, what would that word be?
Man, that's a great one. I usually go to this for a couple of different reasons, but what's meant for you won't miss you.
Ooh.
So I really believe that, when it comes to, we all have an assignment on this earth. We all have an assignment. We all have a particular timing of when that assignment is supposed to take place, and where you're supposed to be within that assignment. And I think, right, when it comes to, your purpose, your goals, your dreams, your aspirations, things you want to achieve in life, oftentimes we are in a place because of capitalism where we're always comparing ourselves to each other. And that's on purpose, right? Comparing ourselves, and comparison is the thief of joy, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you think about, when you compare, as far as that comparison, right, you forget about the journey of where you are. You forget about what it all took to get to where you are, the people that helped you along the way, and just understanding that no matter if you're 15, 20, 30, 35, 40, right? What's meant for you is not going to miss you, right? You may have things that happen in life. Doors may close, opportunities may not come to fruition or manifest, but just know that the Creator, more times than not, oftentimes than not, has a better opportunity for you down the line. Another door that's going to open. That's going to be not a freaking a janky old attic door. It's going to be a nice sliding door that you walk through, right? That's going to be
Mm-hmm.
automated sliding door that you walk through, right? And so, just know that what's meant for you is not going to miss you, right? And so I think for me, I think about that a lot as far as the work that I do, and just knowing that, like, I'm destined for certain things, right? And having that positivity and that optimism, and knowing that, there's been times where I've been, had opportunities. So I recently had an opportunity. I recently thought I had another situation that was going to happen as far as an opportunity, and it didn't happen, right? But at first I was looking like, okay, what's going on here? But even for me, I'm like, look, like I know because of what I'm destined to do and what the Creator has for me as far as the gifts I need to give to the world and to our community. That even though that potential opportunity might have been a little bit more lucrative, it wasn't the right place that was going to allow me to serve our people, my family in a particular way that I need to, that will fulfill my assignment that God has for me. So, I just want to leave you with that. What's meant for you will not miss you. So continue to push forward, continue to think about your future, craft it out, take the necessary steps, right? Align yourself with the right people and continue to push forward brick by brick every day until you get to that point in your life and you can look back and say, wow, like, damn, it didn't miss me. I'm here now. You know what I mean? And just remember that everybody's timing is different. So, when you look at other people and you see what they're doing and where they are in their life at a particular time, don't sweat it, right? You let them, you celebrate them. You let them, shine in their glory and their timing. Just know that your timing is coming.
Man, that was deep.
Appreciate
That was
it.
deep. And it's crazy because I've got a wise word that I had been contemplating posting based on prior conversations that I've had with some of my young men.
Yeah.
And so this conversation pretty much solidified that I'm about to do it,
Wow.
and I
can't
need
wait
to
to
do
see
it.
it,
So
bro.
yeah,
I can't wait.
it's beautiful. So yeah, man, and your wise word kind of goes into that as well too. So
Can't wait,
it was definitely meant to be, man. Brother Hakeem, I genuinely appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? This is on a weeknight. My man's literally had to drive a minute to get back home, and he literally like took care of family business and jumped right on. So I appreciate you for staying up late. Tell the wifey I'm thankful, and I like, please don't beat you down too much for letting me steal you
Nah,
for
she
so
loves
long.
it. It's a part of, she know what comes with the package with this gift, man. It
No doubt.
requires these things, so she supports me in that, bro.
That's love, and that's beautiful, man. And so I'm excited to see the work that that you're gonna do in the
Yeah.
future,
Yes.
the lives that you're gonna change,
Yes.
because it really makes a difference. And many of the males that you work with may not see it immediately,
Yeah.
but over time, right?
For
Just
sure.
like you didn't really notice how you were surrounded by so many prevalent Black men when you were younger, but over time, as an adult now, you can process it and say, oh wow, I was given a unique opportunity. I believe that you're going to have that same impact on people. There's still going to be some that recognize it immediately,
Of course.
but just the fact of the work that you're going to do is going to be literally tremendous. And I believe that you're creating the next generation of educational scholars and leaders amongst men, amongst males of colors, more specifically Black men as well, who are going to reshape the way that we look at, think about, criticize, target, amplify, who we amplify in regards to the conversation of Black men within education and Black men within family structure as well too. So I'm super excited for you, man, and thank you again for joining me on the podcast or on the show.
It was an honor, bro. I mean, anything for you, bro, your family, your brother to me, man. I'm super proud of you and everything that you're doing. I love you, man, and I'm just so happy and elated to see everything that you're doing as far as Wise Word Wednesdays. Fire your boss, everything that you've been doing. Us, for everybody don't know, me and Josiah used to work together too. So,
Literally, yeah.
So all the things that just to seeing the growth in the last couple of years and where we continuing to go, man, and joining forces to like continue to inspire, continue to uplift, man, and pour in and give that love, man. Because that's the number one thing with our men and our young boys. They need love, bro. They need love. And I think a lot of times, and I didn't say this earlier, but I want to make sure I say it before we get off, is that with the work that we do, and what's so powerful is that like when you can show up for brothers and show them the love, of course the word is great, but also the action, like how you show up in action for them. That gives brothers permission to then give love to other men and see that love and receive that love and know that they're worthy of love. Man, I've been in so many spaces and so many times where even when I left work today, I got two brothers calling, "Love you, Black man," because I start saying I love you to them all the time. Like, I love you, Black man. I want you to know that you love, bro. Blah blah. You know what I mean? A lot of brothers walk around here with so much hurt and pain and just all these types of things. So if you could see them and let them know they got somebody within you that sees them and loves them and wants to pour into them, man, that makes all the difference in a young brother's life, man, from making a decision that they might regret down the line, or just quitting on something, or just not, following through with something. But that love, man, is something that we have to continue to pour in, and that's so powerful that impacts our youth, and they can give that to the next generation. So I wanted to say that for sure, bro. But I appreciate you, bro. Thank you
Man,
so much again, man. I look forward to our next conversation. We'll have many conversations because there's so many tentacles to our experience as black men and the black community overall, and the solutions and what we're up against, all that type of thing. So I'm just looking forward to the next time we get together, bro. Appreciate you.
yes, sir, man. Thank you again. I love you, brother. Love you, King. Continue to do great work. So FYB presents Wise Word Wednesdays. I'm gonna leave you with a We Fresh, and I love you.